I'm playing around with the new piece of tech, and so I'm going to be 20 seconds. No tape. Good morning and welcome. It's a used car show, and we know that used cars are, obviously very important. I thought I would play a clip from a couple of years ago to start the show. If you're not familiar with Bob Ruth Ford, this is Rob Ruth, not to be confused with his dad, Bob Ruth. Pretty big used car retailer, not as big as Beaver Toyota, but he's in the large metropolis of Dillsburg, Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with Pennsylvania, that's not a big town. So I'm going to start with a clip. You can watch the entire clip. This is just a short clip from a bonus round I did on used cars a couple years ago. Here we go. So that was kind of interesting because we did have a discussion before we started today on digital experience on new cars, but on used cars, that's kind of interesting. So we'll obviously talk about that, but let's get on with the show. And good morning. And for those people listening on or watching on LinkedIn, feel free to comment or ask questions.
Life is about connection. Having a support system to lean on. And roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
One of the really nice things about Larry, and one of the reasons that we brought him to our dealership, is he's still very much aligned with our core values and with our brand, which is thoughtful and professional service. And because that alignment, So they've worked out well because he was so committed to the success of others. We really knew that he was the right person to spend time with our sales team, with our managers and each sales consultant. And we're just really thrilled to have a partnership with him. And so we thank him.
How do you adventure? Is it fast? Is it free? Is it clear? Is it rugged? Is it remote? For your next adventure, trust MotoClose for buying, selling, trading, and protecting all of your motorized assets. Powered by Disclose Dealership Management Dashboard, your all-in-one DMS, CRM, menu, lead gen, inventory, staff, client, and deal management solution. Disclose DMD, like a DMS, only better. Mention promo code AutoHub2025 to get special pricing, including waive setup costs, no contract, and your first month's free.
Car dealers often underestimate the power of social media. Are you wondering why my face is plastered in your newsfeed? Are you a GM, dealer principal, or a manager at a car dealership wondering why you see me all the time on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and all over social media? Well, that didn't happen by chance. I target car dealers that are in-market shoppers for social media services, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for you so that you target in-market shoppers for your brand of customers that purchase your vehicles. During my Viato days, helping car dealers appraise and price cars, everyone was asking me, what do I do on social media? What do I do with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? And this was back in 2016. So here we are 10 years later. I started a company, became an entrepreneur, and now I help car dealers. They either outsource their social media needs to us, or we have a training and education center where we can teach all of your employees how to do social media in-house. 90% of consumers actually follow a business on Instagram. The average adult sits on TikTok for 2 hours a day in the rabbit hole. To learn more information about it or to get a demo from one of my sales associates, click the link below. We would absolutely love to help you.
So I thought we would start this morning with Mr. Gary Campbell. Thanks for joining, Gary. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what you do and share your thoughts on how you find more used cars in 2025.
Oh, geez, you put me right on the spot. Obviously we're located in Northern California. So we are hitting up public auctions right now to try to find more of those lower mileage used cars. Obviously you're fighting with the public on those, and so a lot of those go for retail pricing.
Yep.
However, every once in a while you'll steal one or two there that you can get on the wholesale level, and you'll get a decent car with reasonable mileage. And just expanding the network, we're going further and further and further away from the dealership to try to get a decent car that hasn't been picked over. Right. Most of the cars that we're finding at auction, those are the ones that are picked through. Was traded in at a new car dealership or a used car or a wholesaler. It's always got some sort of hidden surprise. So that's raising the recon of the vehicle, right?
Right.
So I'm here to learn. I'm a student in the game. I'm here to learn.
Fantastic. So we had a little discussion, Brandy and I, before the show started, about average days in stock based on what ChatGPT said. What do you think the realistic number in 2025 is for used car inventory? I know you run a Mitsubishi store, right?
I do.
Yeah. So obviously you sell a lot of used. What's your used car days in stock goal, and what's the reality in your opinion?
Well, obviously our goal is a 60-day stock, just because of the time of transportation and getting the car to the store and the reconditioning. We would love to have a 30-day supply, right? I think every dealer would love to have that.
Right.
The realistic, of that is that's not going to happen in today's world. So you're paying a little bit more floor plan interest. And then, as you're buying further and further out, you got that days to transport to the store as well.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I know I've talked on many shows about recon and the importance of getting that done and photo ready as soon as possible. Rob Ruth, we started the show with, or Bob Ruth from Rob Ruth Ford. And I always get confused with those two because his name is different than the store, his dad's store. But yeah, I mean, he sells a lot of used cars, and he doesn't even participate in the Ford used program because he has his own opinions on that. But clearly, yeah, you want to have them in stock and buy them right and sell them quickly as possible. Thanks for that. Brandy, obviously, you were talking a little bit about days in stock, and you deal with a lot of dealers. I mean, what do you think in terms of how dealers can find more used cars today?
Really, I think it really starts with your retention tools. Everything, if we really look at everything that a dealership should be doing right now, is these seats, whether it's leasing, it's your fleet, it's your service department, every tool that we have laid out, every tool that your OEM has looked at giving you, are all tools based on a very calculated retention.
Right.
And so that would be the big thing to start. I also think that people should really, also trades, but that's a whole other story, because you got trades coming in. If you're gonna step up on anything, if you're gonna pay more for anything, how about do it when you're doing another deal? Right? Because that just goes hand in hand. But also, I really think that there's something to be said about creating a rebranded source or a rebranded umbrella to your buying habits. So it might be something, a whole different name. Close to my office here is a company, and I'm not gonna say the name, but they post themselves as a buying source for used inventories, and they help you sell your vehicle. Now, again, this is owned by a pretty big dealership group. So it's about rebranding and repositioning yourself and what you're after, and possibly utilizing that to outsource any new inventory.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're familiar with Van and of course David Long and also VinQ, where they're setting up a buying center to actually go out and actively buy cars. And I've been on many shows, but also interviewed David Long multiple times on this issue or the opportunity there. And the thing that was really interesting for me as I started looking at this a couple of years ago and talk to him about it was, he basically employs people in buying centers or trains dealers how to do this, where that person's job is only to buy cars. It's not the used car manager. It's basically a team of people that go out and buy cars, usually from consumers, not from auctions. But I think that's interesting to take it to the next level and saying, okay, it's not ABC dealer group anymore. It's, ABC buying center. I've even heard of cases where it's like, oh, we have an auction on weekends in our local community. So there's all kinds of ways to do that. I mean, when I sold cars, I used to do it by basically driving down residential streets around the dealership and putting cards in car where they opened the door, the card would fall down. But, we bought a lot of cars that way. I mean, we took a lot of hate calls, but it was all good. We were buying cars. So that was kind of the way I looked at it.
A lot of hate calls. The thing that also, though, is that, we haven't got creative like that in such a long time either. You know what I mean? And we did go through COVID that led us into being quite spoiled with everything but this is also, I will say, I really feel this is a readjustment of that. We are just catching up to what we experienced from COVID, and we are having to recognize that everything is supply and demand. You might have to step up on trade, and just like Gary said, you're watching some of it go as retail. But yeah, if you've got the opportunity right in front of you, trades are a big one as well.
Fantastic. So Peter, if you were taking off your hat and saying, hey, I'm now in charge of a used car department, or I'm now in charge of a buying center, how do I source those cars outside of the surprise auction cars? I bought it. There's a surprise for me waiting for me. Shocking.
Well, the very first thing I would do is drop auction from my purchasing umbrella. Auction, as was just said, they are picked over. They are the cars that nobody wants. Because if the car was retailable, if the car had an opportunity to be reconditioned at a reasonable rate, and then put to a sale of retail, the dealer would never let it go, ever. So yeah, David Long has opened up 94 buying centers. I know that because I work with David now. He's one of my clients. So bringing forth buy centers, absolutely, we need them. And then the other source, there's two errors that are generally made in a dealership. One is, okay, let's use our service lane as a buy center. Well, there's that, and then there's the upgrade center. So if, depending on what you're using your service lane for, those are two totally polar opposites. Now, Ben Stock uses it as an upgrade center. He doesn't use it as a buy center. Others are looking to claim unreasonably high number of acquisitions through the service lane, but they're looking at it as a buy center, but actually trying to move them to upgrades. So they have to define what they're going to do there. But the whole thing is, yes, finding out a solution to engage cars. If you look at Paul Machine, which we all know from Black Book, he has started a new company called Vintrax, and Vintrax is basically going to the banks and looking at their challenges from everything from their underwriting of the lease portfolios to repossessions and everything else, and they're dropping them into dealerships for no charge, no transport costs, no nothing, and they're paying commission based on the dealership selling them. There's Jim Moran, who has Retail My Ride, which is a solution for consignment. But Brandy was saying something earlier about time for day supply. I just pulled up a group in New York, big group in New York called Empire Automotive Group. They have 1,335 cars in stock right now, used across their multi rooftops. 1,335. Their day supply of used cars is 14 days. Yeah. They're turning their cars at 14 days. Yeah, the way they do it is they're running their reconditioning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they have a mandate of 36 hours for recon. That's it. Yeah. If they don't do it in 36 hours, they've lost money. Now, being at Used Car Palooza last year, David Spizak, Frank Knox, Daryl Steed, Brian Kramer, all these automotive experts in this field were talking about velocity, not profit. Velocity drives overall NP, not GP. So if we can make our money work for us, lower our GP, increase our velocity, we can change the dynamics of this business, and that's what Empire is doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I had the opportunity to listen to what I think was the used car manager at Beaver Toyota in the U.S. when he was talking about moving from 100 used cars a month to 800 a month. I think was the number, if I recall. But he was talking about the journey to get there. So I think part of the challenge is inventory. But what he said on the call was basically, don't just think you can sell 800 used cars or even 400 used cars. You've got to really think about it step by step, how I'm going to get there. Part of the challenge is getting those vehicles right and retailing them properly and making sure you turn them correctly. But more importantly, really doing it step by step. You're not going to go from selling 50 used cars to 800. That's just not realistic. You've got to put a plan together. But Larry, you work with a lot of dealers. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, my message is going to tie in with everybody's. The reason I jumped off is I just made a deal with a guy in Cool Springs, Tennessee, because he needs techs. Yeah. And I did his sister store, got them techs. Notice I didn't say, yeah, I'm busy, or call me in 7 hours, or I'm on Ian's show. I love Ian, and everybody knows I have a crush on Brandy. Sorry, Peter. I lean toward gorgeous blondes from Canada. Long story short, it's not just enough to load up on cars, because I know dealers that are insane enough to just say, yeah, I'll buy 50 more cars and I'll sell them. You've got to be able to turn them quickly. You've got to understand the concept that the most money you make is on a quick turn. Because on a long turn, it shows on your daily sheet, yeah, we made 3,000. What was your carrying costs? So I think, like everything else, the sexy stuff is great, but what gets you through is blocking and tackling. And when you have a system that's really strong as to how quickly you get your cars into the shop, out of the shop, how quickly you market them, and who's actually accountable, who actually knows what's going on and how long. Then I think, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a whole lot easier than waking up one day and having cars that you've had for 4 months that are so far out of whack, nobody knows what the heck to do. Writing down cars is not the most profitable way to really arrive at your 13th month on statement. So like everything else, just a smart process, understanding the turn is the key, and understanding, I think, Brandy, I heard you from the other room, I think it's more than one lane. Man, you should be hitting everything possible. Brandy, don't laugh at me, or you can laugh if you want. I just trained a bunch of guys in Texas, and I said, I got 10 guys hired, great week. And I said, they're going to give you little shirts that say Forest Lane, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram. Start walking up to people in parking lots and saying, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I work at Forest Lane. Your car is beautiful. If you ever decide to trade it or even sell it, boy, would we give you a lot of money for that. The service lane is still being neglected. Good salespeople always ask, do you want to buy a car? The hell's wrong with asking, do you want to sell a car?
100%. Yeah. So Gary, I know it's hard to find used cars, and obviously you got to look at different areas to find them, whether that be auction, despite what Peter said, even though they're surprise cars, whether that be going up to people in a parking lot or at a restaurant or whatever it might be. My tactic of driving down, residential streets at night and used cars and really trying to buy the cars was a great tactic back in the day. I still think it's a great tactic. But when you look at all these things, where are you finding success, and why do you think it's so hard to buy used cars in 2025?
So I heard you mention VinQ earlier, and we are actually signed up with VinQ. We're on our second month of using it.
Okay.
And so I'm starting to implement that into Facebook Marketplace to try to purchase those on-street cars or local cars to us.
Yep.
Haven't had a lot of success with it. I personally, as the dealer principal, I've spent about 2 hours a day on that. I have a full-time employee on it, training him up to speed. I know I'm kind of avoiding your direct question, but I'm giving you other areas that we're using to try to purchase cars. We also are opening a buying center. We're rolling that out right now. And then why do I think that there's no cars available? So, even right now we have dealers in our area that aren't getting enough cars from the manufacturers to sell.
Right.
You hear that, the big three have too much inventory, but I think the, Japanese companies are struggling to produce massive amounts of cars for us to sell.
Right.
Mitsubishi, I can't say I, can order 100 cars from them now. We're allocated X number of cars. Sometimes that's not enough.
Right. So do you find that used cars are that solution, or do you find that's going to change?
Oh, well, we have to sell something. So used cars are my solution, right?
Right.
If I can't sell new cars, I can only make so much in the service department. Being in a rural area, I don't have enough butts to get into the service department.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a Mitsubishi, obviously great dealer in Northern California, but also if you're looking for a Mitsubishi part, arguably the biggest Mitsubishi parts website in the United States market, which, really surprised me. I know when we talked a few years ago, do you find that that's increased in terms of people keeping cars longer? Do you feel that the parts business will increase? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So people are keeping their cars longer, so they're servicing them. Our service department does stay quite busy. and we're having to hire a few people there and get people up to speed quicker.
Oh, okay. And do you think it's realistic to look at that sort of 30-day turn as a realistic target? I mean, what do you think?
For the used car,
Yeah.
I mean, we would love to have 30 days. Obviously that cuts the cost. Can I get there? Not sure yet, because we're buying cars from, 3 states over, right? So
Right.
you got the shipping time, you got the recon time. I love the idea of a 24-hour service recon. Don't know if I could implement that in the store.
Right. All right. So thanks for that. What's the best tip? Go ahead, Brady.
I was just gonna say, I want to add to that, because one thing that one of the former stores that I've contracted to, Derek Dodge, when they were in their glory days here in
800
Edmonton, doing
800 a month.
300 to 600 units a month. Yeah, exactly, steady. One thing that they were famous for, and that I really haven't seen a lot of stores do it otherwise, is coded cost. And it really prevented a lot of chasing, etc. Here's your coded cost. If you're selling it in the first 14 days, it's going for this because it's primo. The second it hits day 15, it's going to this price, and so on. And this really was a tool, obviously, to prevent chasing managers for price reductions, etc. This is my bottom line. Like, everybody bought in, they felt it, and they understood, but it also created quite an awareness for how crucial it is to get the top money in that first 2 weeks, but how quickly after those 2 weeks, if you didn't get the attention, you can just cut your loss, reduce it, rather substantially, just to move the iron. And I just think that that's one thing that I don't see a lot of stores doing. The other thing I just want to also add that, to add in even from the earlier was, all these buying centers, the one thing that we're not doing is reminding ourselves about what the consumer is going through. They do not want to sell their vehicle privately. They are praying that the second you come out with a trade number, it's going to be at least close, within reason of where they would like to be, so that they could just be done with the hassle. And so buying centers, I think, are brilliant, because you're alleviating one of the number one things that people search, is just dealing with the whole fear of the process. Legitimate buyers, legitimate money transferring, etc. So I really think that that's just such a brilliant angle, and that should be really exposed more, because that is the number one thing that people do not want to have to deal with. They don't want to have to buy a car, but they definitely don't want to have to sell one either.
Yeah, I mean, what I always used to do, whether I had a customer coming in looking at a new vehicle or was in service who was looking to sell their vehicle, is I just really give them sort of my Coles Notes version on, if you were going to sell your car yourself, the things to be aware of, the things that you might want to be concerned about. And that usually was enough for people to at least entertain an offer. But what I also did, and that this is something that I learned early days when I started selling cars, was I just talked to a lot of people trying to buy their car. So I went out and actively marketed to buy vehicles, because I knew most of the people who were going to sell us their vehicle probably needed something else. And I would argue today that when you look at what people may have paid for cars 2 or 3 years ago, there may be a different motivation, just because, okay, I have this car that, was very expensive new and maybe over MSRP new. If I can find something pre-owned that you guys have that maybe works for my budget a little bit better, maybe that's a win-win situation, because you get that inventory that you want, but also you get them into something that, maybe more fits their needs or their budget. They may have a couple of years ago just bought something because it was available. And that's something I think that you can really turn a head on there. You can basically do that. But I found I had the most success with, after I got screamed at over the phone, what are you doing in my neighborhood? Trying to buy cars. I would go, hey, would you consider selling it? Yeah, I actually would. How does that work? So I think that don't react to that aggravation, but more react to, is it something you'd at least consider? And then just do it a lot. You're going to have people that, you can never make a deal with on a used car. And maybe you have to do a combination of new and used. But if you're not familiar with Derek Dodge, I had the opportunity to work there a number of years ago. At the time, they were the top selling Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat franchise in Canada. They were selling 800 new models a month. Plus, they had a massive used car lot that was acres in size. And how they did it was basically it was a volume play. They had a lot of inventory. They moved a lot of vehicles at a very quick pace. They had a very active in-house subprime department called the Green Zone, where they basically work that like death. And you know, they that was a machine. Like working there was a massive opportunity. But on the used car side, that was kind of the side they didn't pay that much attention to. So it was kind of interesting. Anyway, Peter, what do you think about why it's so hard to buy used cars? I mean, why is it so challenging?
Well, there's two aspects of the used car portfolio that people want. They want under $15,000, or they want 2 to 3 year cars that have been depreciated and they're getting for their deemed value. So let's look at under $15,000 cars. Well, market conditions have pushed the under $15,000 cars to being a unicorn. For a good under $15,000 car, it's a unicorn. It's hard to find. It's 8 to 10 years old. It has over 100,000 miles on it. It has this, it has that. What's the usable lifespan of that vehicle left? And that's the challenge, just based on market conditions. Second part of it is the 2 to 3 year old cars. Well, COVID killed that. We lost 7 million cars during COVID that are just out of the marketplace because they were never produced. And so we can't find those 2 to 3 year old cars because they don't exist. And because when the dealers have put the pricing that they did during COVID, those cars are in massive negative equity right now that they can't trade out of. So now you combine those two factors together and you've created the perfect storm. And we know this because what's happening? Well, the average ownership is now 12 years going through a dealership for their fixed operations. So now what do? How do we get those cars? How do we create that cycle? And the challenge with the US is that their leasing penetration, it is non-existent. And they're at 18.4%, I believe, nationally right now on leasing penetration. When COVID was around, Canada dropped to 56% penetration, and the dealerships were running around saying the sky's falling. So we were 3 times their penetration on leasing, and we were saying the sky's falling. That's how you control your used car inventory. When I ran the Volvo group that I was running, I specifically bought or stocked my new cars based on what I wanted in 2 years' time. And we were at 88% leasing penetration in our store. And that was specifically designed so I could pull people out in 18 months and have a healthy used car inventory. It's a challenge. It's a massive.
Hey, Peter, I think the cool thing is you're 100% right that the lack of a leasing cycle where cars are coming back in. But the interesting thing is, I think the only way they're going to pull out of this inequity is leasing, because it allows you to cap so much more than MSRP. And all right, you still have a hard payment, but in 3 years you're ready for a new car and you're starting fresh. So it's interesting. This is one time that the cure is really going to be a cure, because it's going to solve the problem that exists and get us back into a cycle where at least we know every 3 years there's cars coming back into the market, because it is a little weird out there right now.
But again, when you look at leasing, and I was a lease manager and I managed a store, but also managed an internet department. The big reason the lease is not at the high take rate it needs to be at, in my opinion, is basically not presenting it every single time. If you want to lease a lot of vehicles, it's not brain science by any stretch. It's, hey, has anyone talked to you about different ways to own a vehicle? Even if they're a cash buyer, like, listen, hey, you pay cash, it's this, you finance, it's this, you lease, it's that. And what I found when I worked at a Honda store was I presented leasing every single time. I got a lot of leases, not because the customer said, hey, please lease me this car. It was, hey, did you want to know what your options were? So I think part of it is presenting it every single time in a very non-pressure way. Like, I don't care how you buy it, but here's some options. You sell it with options. But also I think, and this was something that was really interesting from a point of view of a couple of people I was talking to. I'm involved in a local project, and a couple of people were asking me, they found out I was a car guy, they're asking me about how they should buy a car. And these are a couple of real scenarios. So a lady, she's a Toyota buyer. She's written off 3 Toyotas in the last 6 years. And she puts a lot of money down to have a low payment, and then she writes them off. I said, what are you doing? Like, A, you need some driving lessons. Get it. B, why would you finance a car that this is not one you've written off? It's like 3 in the space of 5 years. Like, clearly, like, that's probably not a good investment of capital. But also, when you look at it from a point of view of leasing, and this is my takeaway as I talk to usually customers, but sometimes customers than their parents if they were younger, the parents would be like, no one ever explained leasing to me. And at the end of the day, leasing, to your point, Peter, gets you that inventory in a few years, but also it gives the customer options. And I think the mistake that a lot of car dealers make, because the customer goes, oh, I don't want to rent a car. No, well, you're not renting it. You can always buy it, man. Like, it's fine. But it's a different way to own a car. And I think if those customers had been leasing even at almost over MSRP a couple of years ago, they would have been in a better situation today. Maybe it wouldn't have been as pleasant as it was 5 years ago to take them out, but it would have been more pleasant than it is right now. And I think that's part of the challenge. It's leasing, but it's also the amount of long-term financing and the amount financed. Like, it used to be like some people had a lot of negative, but now it's like everybody does. So it's a little bit of a problem.
So
anyway,
here's this. Here, and I'll agree 100% with you. And the situation is the people are not getting presented the opportunity to make a choice. And I used to say to people, people used to always say cash is king. Well, no, cash is not king. I get paid before that car goes over the curb, regardless. I press a button on my computer and I'm funded. So that I get paid. So there's no waiting for contracts in transit or anything like that. But here's the thing. In my presentation to people, and I was more of a relationship seller, and I would say, listen, I don't care if you buy cash, you finance it, you lease it, or pay in Fruit Loops. As long as I can convert it to legal tender, I don't care how you purchase it. I just want to retain you as a customer. And I'm going to show you the best opportunities for you personally to purchase this vehicle. It's a car. It's a tool. It's getting you from point A to point B, and that is what it is. You should be looking at the lowest cost, period, for you to own that car. And right now, I can show you that leasing is the best opportunity for you. That's it. I don't care if you choose it or not. That's it. So,
hey, Peter, you could also hit them with the wisdom that I'm sure Canada is similar to America in one respect. We love cars, and everybody's always trying to get a new car as quickly as possible. So, hey, the beautiful part of this, Mr. Customer, is it's a win-win. Just when you're starting to get tired of your car or could have repairs, you're out of it. And I'm not going to fib to you. For me, it's great because I get to see your smiling face in 3 years and you're ready for another vehicle. So it's the old, Brandy, we said this argument so much, it got memorized. We quoted J. Paul Getty, who said, you want to buy appreciating assets and rent depreciating assets. Why would you want to invest heavily in something that's going to go down? So if you give them a whiff and explain why it's a win-win for them, there you go.
But the other thing you always got to say, and this is a tip for not only buying used cars, but also buying new cars, is, how long do you actually own a car historically? Like, a lot of people don't even know. They're like, oh, I don't know, like 5 years. Okay. So if you're looking at a 3 to 5 year ownership term, now bear in mind in the US, you have shorter lease terms than in Canada. Most commonly, it's a 24-month or 36-month. Whereas in Canada, it might be a 48-month or a 60-month, but generally 48 is the more preferred term in the Canadian market. Either way, if that customer is saying, hey, I'm going to own it 3 to 5 years anyway, it doesn't make sense to invest double in an asset that, to your point, Larry, is going down in value. But more importantly, most customers don't even look at it that way. They go, hey, I don't want to make a payment. Now they're willing to do it on a cell phone that they're never going to own, which is even crazier, in my opinion. But I just don't understand why that's not explained every time. And I think that's the takeaway. If you're looking for better used cars, you're looking for more used cars, you're looking for a steady stream or pipeline of used cars, but more importantly, you're looking to sell more cars with that customer who's in a challenging situation, which we know customers got put into in the last couple of years. You need to be of help. You need to say, hey, like, you don't want to be in that 96-month finance again, do you? No, I don't want to be in that. So why don't we show you how to do it differently next time? Go ahead, Brendan.
I think we actually are all assuming that everybody in the positions they're in actually does their job and knows even about leasing or how to explain it or how to calculate it, etc. And I'm going to tell you right now, with all of the finance managers that I've ever worked with, and we're talking hundreds, very few know how to explain and calculate a lease. Very few, sadly enough. We make that assumption right there. That was also for me when I started building Disclose. It started out as a disclosure menu.
Right.
And part of that, it's a 5-page menu, unlike most, but part of it was a pricing disclosure. And this pricing disclosure wasn't only to educate the consumer, it was to ensure that our staff had a tool to plug the numbers in and actually have something to present. We've taught them how to present on Foursquare, we've taught them how to present in other formats. And so now we have to have a tool that actually makes sure that they do the job and they don't fall into their unconscious bias, right? We can make the assumption, like you say, oh, it's 48 months, but I'll tell you, and I brought up this story before, Melanie Shatford went and had to desk her own deal at 2 different Infinity dealerships to show them how to use the non-subvent rebate against a short-term regular lease rate. And so what this bulk amount did was substantially dropped our payment down on a QX60. The finance manager is adamantly ready to present 0% or low subvent interest rate, not using any rebates. She actually had to show him how to do this. And sadly, this is where it starts. We have no tools that truly walk us through making sure the consumer gets an educated, informed option decision.
Well, the other
Brandy,
thing,
it's, how, well, hold on a second, Ian, I apologize. It's Brandy, how, even though I run my whole business off my phone, so I'm not a caveman, it's the same complaint I always have about computers taking over our lives. I use it as an adjunct to bow through the thousands of people that apply for the jobs. But it's now become the crutch. Peter is going to laugh his butt off, and so is he, and you're too young to know this, young lady. We used to do leases by hand. You can't find a manager on the planet right now that can do a lease by hand. If the computer shut off, they're out of business. It's what you can't. I mean.
So imagine that they don't know how to do it, and now they have to explain it.
I want Peter to give me an honest answer. You know why he's got gray hair? He's only 27 years old. He got so tired of hearing people come to the desk and saying, "Boss, it's 10,000. What's the sales tax?" Hey, stupid! It's the same 600 it was last week. It's 6%. So when you have people that don't know how to add and subtract, that don't know how to use pen and paper, that don't know the multiplication and division tables that we couldn't get out of elementary school with, this is what you have. You have a whole society of people that punch figures in. If for any reason they're corrupted or they're weird, this is what you have. It's why we've got a whole generation that can't communicate. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Peter and Ann, but you know how friends you
well,
get with AI.
it's funny. It's funny. It's funny with leasing, and part of it is payment and how you present it. And I always used to present options using a very simple tool that was part of a desking tool from CDK at the time. But it was really about the setup before the presentation. So what I would do is explain the pros and cons. I developed a tool for that. If you're interested, send me an email. Happy to send it to you. It's always better to handwrite it. You can print it, but it's always better to handwrite it because you can explain it based on what the customer says, and it's lethal for this kind of presentation. That's not to say you're ever going to get 100% of anything, but if you present it every time, you're going to get there. And then what I always used to do, which I guess is counterintuitive to a Foursquare or even a discount pitch, was I would sell the car based on payment options. I wouldn't sell it based on discount, at least not out of the gate. Because to me, if I knew how they were going to pay for it, it changed the whole conversation. So that also changed the conversation in the finance department. I did have the opportunity to work for Nissan, and the words that most finance managers hate is it's a cash deal, but they don't understand, to your point, Brandy, how to explain a leasing and a finance deal. They could probably change that whole conversation by using the same tool in the finance office. Like, I know you want to pay cash, no problem. But what about these other options? Would you want to make it more affordable for yourself? And that, to me, is really, instead of assuming a loss, looking at it and going, hey, maybe I should take some time to explain to you what should have been explained in the front, right?
Well, I'm just going to key on a couple things. First of all, you were back in Ontario when Sills was around in Buffalo.
When what, sorry?
Sills. Sills clothing store in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And they had a policy similar to what Randy was talking about. Every day they discount the clothes. Every single day, no matter how long and his tagline was, an educated consumer is our best customer, because they would know when it was the optimum time to buy that sweater or that jacket or that, because they knew when they start entering in the risk zone, and because that wouldn't be there anymore. So they would wait 4 or 5 days for it to be on the shelf, and then they'd say, okay, I have to go in and buy it, because at 6 or 7 or 8 days it's going to be gone because it's being discounted every single day. So dealerships that are working on that dynamic pricing strategy are winning. And if they advertise on that dynamic pricing strategy, they win, and they'll reduce their days in supply. So there are like CarMax does it. Every single day, a CarMax depot gets an email from head office saying, go change the prices. And they change the prices daily in CarMax. And why is CarMax the #1 retailer of used cars? Because they operate in a manner that allows them to do it. They operate in a manner that allows them to buy cars. They operate in a manner that their velocity of sales actually dictates they can pay more. They can pay more than anyone else because they're looking at a lower gross profit per vehicle, but they're looking at velocity, which in turn gives them a higher NP. Now, the other side of it, and we've talked about leasing, I remember back when we were doing used car leases, and Larry will remember this, when you could lease a premium automobile, a Jag, a Land Rover, a Porsche, a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, you could lease one of those cars for less money than you could lease a Toyota for.
Yep.
But it was 2 to 3 years old. I remember leasing Jags at $299 for 24 months. And people would come and flock to them, and we were making $7,000-8,000 gross profit on each one of them.
Randy, the residuals were ridiculous.
Yeah.
There were a lot of companies that were used car leasing. Unfortunately, they're out of business right now, but.
Yeah. But the whole thing is, if you look at a vehicle, and I remember being in Chicago at the Bentley dealership in Chicago. They were leasing out Bentley Flying Spurs, brand new Flying Spurs, for $999 a month. And basically they knew that those cars were coming back in 24 months at X amount of dollars, and they could sell them again. And they basically, what they wanted to do is get those cars out in the marketplace. End of story. And they were looking at the used car play, not at the new car play. And that's a challenge that we have focusing on right now, because we have no used cars. we're not looking to all the sources that we can buy used cars at. And we're not looking at the right, here's another one. And I don't know if you all saw it, but Hertz and Enterprise have been emailing all their customers saying, we want to buy your car.
Interesting.
And they're getting into the used car game. So do you think the supply is dwindling now? Because they're saying, okay, I can buy someone out of their car at a depreciated price that's 2 years old. When was the last time you were in a rental car that has 70, 80,000 miles in it?
Not very often.
Yeah, not too often. Now you do. I went down to Nashville for Women in Automotive. I rented a car to drive down there, and the car had 80,000 miles on it.
Interesting.
It was a 2-year-old Maxima with 80,000 miles, and it was still an astronomical price. But the challenge is there's no cars, and believe me, the rental car companies are going after your used car inventory. I think in the last All Things Acquisition call with Todd Caputo and Frank Knox, we came across 9 different channels for acquisition.
Yep.
Different channels.
Well, you got to be looking at everything. You got to be looking at everything. But more importantly, and this is something that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, but should be, and we talked about it on many shows we've done on EVs, is EVs are a heavily depreciated asset. And if you can add a warranty to it to cover your battery costs, that's going to be your number one in certain markets used car to buy at the sub 15 grand range if it's got miles on it. But more importantly, it's kind of interesting that Hertz is marketing to their current customers because they just unloaded a bunch of these things. So I think you're going to see dealers who use these tips. They're going to be looking in every area to find used cars. I think you've got to come up with a strategy, but more importantly, you got to look at all the options. Each market's different, but people are driving cars, and those car customers will become new customers. You got to be talking to them and having those conversations, whether it's setting up that conversation saying, hey, we appraised it 2 months ago. Did you want another appraisal? Is it something you'd still consider? And I think just like any other follow-up, you've got to look at it as a long-term part of your strategy to get that inventory. But Brandy, we're almost out of time. What's your final thought on, what would you do in terms of your best angle to do this as we roll in the second half of 2025? Shocking.
Again, where I started and where I'll end is definitely with the retention tools and every angle that we really have to explore. But one of the things that I did build into Disclose that was intended for this exact purpose was a tool called digital consignment.
Okay.
And it really was for the position when you don't reach that trade value that the client needs to say, listen, we have the vehicle you want, you love it, you got this far, you don't want to go this far again with somebody else to tell you the same thing. Why don't you digitally consign your unit and let me try to sell it for you in these next 2 weeks? Give me 2 weeks, you don't shop anywhere else. You be loyal to me. I will hold the vehicle. You'll get right of first refusal against anybody else.
Yep.
However, let's try to get this sold and then you can obviously get the higher trade value, but you'll also see the offers that I'll get.
Yeah, I mean,
again, one angle just to go after our primo spot, which is creating 2 deals out of 1, which is a non-trade on or a trade-in. So yeah, definitely to have that would be one of my strategies. Absolutely, is to digitally consign things that I do not make an appropriate trade agreement on.
Well, there's a lady in Ireland. I think she's in Northern Ireland. I'm not sure. Sells high-end used cars, and her angle is basically these guys who have these or these gals who have these, that's not usually their only car. So yeah, the consignment piece, especially in the high end, if I'm a Ferrari dealer or Benz dealer or whatever, they probably have more cars in the household than just that high end car that they may not drive very much. And there's actually, when I lived in Vancouver, there was a Ferrari dealer that had to build another level on their Ferrari franchise just to stock used cars, because they had, and 90% of those were consignment vehicles. They weren't just normal vehicles. And actually, I shared a really crazy trade-in with a buddy of mine in Toronto. So the guy wanted to buy one of these new Grenadier 4-wheel drives. You know what he traded in on it? Ferrari F40. I was like, how do you even price that trade-in, let alone talk about a crazy trade-in?
That's
but
a $5 million car.
Well, he traded it for a Grenadier. It was a $2.4 million cash back on the purchase, and the dealer had it less than a day in stock because he was sourcing that car before he even took it on trade. So that's another thing that I think dealers really need to start thinking strategically. I'm taking this car. What am I going to do with it? I got to clear it in 30 days. You know, what am I putting the customer into? How am I marketing that? And that was like a crazy trade to me, but more importantly, it illustrates that anybody, no matter what car it is, even one there's probably a couple hundred in the world, I don't know. You know, you never know what can happen when you have someone walk in if you put a solution together that makes sense for them. But
it's really funny. It's like a parallel universe I lived in, because I sold a traded car. It was a smashed up Pinto, but it had a magazine with a picture of Ferrari. That's not as close as I got.
Well, I'll end on a Ferrari story. That there was a gentleman who owned a junkyard in California that collected all these cars and everything else. And he collected a rare Ferrari that was wrecked at a racetrack, burnt to a crisp, and mangled. It looked like it had been in a crusher. It was sold for $2.1 million because it was one of 13 cars, and it was the only way that you could buy one of these cars and send it back to Ferrari for them to pull it apart and rebuild it. And then once it was rebuilt, because it was all the original pieces were there, it would be worth $15 to $20 million. So it would cost him $5 million to do it. So it was $7.5 million into the car for a $20 million car. And that's basically what we're talking about here is, are we seeing the end picture? Are we seeing what is down the tunnel? What is behind that light at the end of the tunnel? What are we seeing? And we have to look at the most obscure and crazy opportunities to look at what can be coming out of it. No one, 10 years ago, if you said, oh, you got to open up a buy center, people go, what? 10 years ago, you'd say, there's two ways of opportuning your service drive. People will actually come in and buy cars or sell your car. Consignment. Let's go buy rental cars. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's look at other countries. Let's look at, are you scanning, bring a trailer? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? People would never, oh no, we're just looking at trade-ins. We're running with a 30% trade-in and 40% at auction, and that's getting us to our numbers. And with our leasing portfolio, we hit our CPOs, and that's the dealer mentality. It's changing fast, and we have to adapt very quickly. And I'll close with this one last thing. Derek Simons of Numa said to me the other day, technology's doubling at a rate of 7 months.
Yep.
7 months. That means when ChatGPT was announced just around NADA 2023 in Dallas, it's at 128 times its capacity.
Yep.
It is, in 7 months, it'll be 264%. We are on a rocket ship right now, and if we do not realize what we have the capability of doing, we're going to be left at the station.
But it's more important than that, Peter, which is basically, if I've got 6 channels to buy used cars, I need to buy used cars, I need to sell 200 a month, I probably need to have 300 in stock to get there. You need to look at these little things. So reconditioning. What's the source of my car? How am I buying the cars? What's working? What isn't working? And you really need to focus on getting those nailed down and then scaling over time. The reason I use that Beaver Toyota example was they didn't get to that 400, 800 used cars a month, one car at a time. They did it over time. And that's really what it comes down to. That's what you got to look at. But at the end of the day, also, and this is an example from a Honda store in the small town of Winnipeg, they basically were sourcing the used car, and that was part of the deal, but it was also part of the calculation because they already had that sourced and sold before the deal even happened. So I know that's a little bit harder with spot rolls, but when you're looking at it going, the deal has to be also calculated based on, is that a good car to buy and what can we get for it? So you can manipulate those numbers based on, not being able to find that car otherwise. And I think that's really what probably happened with that Grenadier. I'm sure he got a hell of a deal on the Grenadier, because how often does a F40 show up as a trade-in? Probably not often, I would guess. To the point where I texted someone and they were like, where did that come from? So at the end of the day, it's really looking at all the options, sourcing the cars and watching out for the surprises from the auction, really talking to your customers and presenting offers and presenting them often. But I think lastly, and this is something that really surprises me today, some dealers don't incentivize their staff to go fetch. Like, you should be incentivizing every salesperson on your team, go fetch me some cars, whether you have a buying center or not. I'll pay you. You go find these cars. This is what I'm looking for right now. Go find them. I'll give you a list. Go call those people, right? And I think that's really what motivated me to buy cars was, hey, if I'm not selling anything, why am I not talking to people who have something that maybe we want? But we're out of time, so thanks very much. And if you're looking for more used cars, there's lots of options. Just make sure you pick your battles and maximize the channels, not channel, that you have in front of you, because there's lots. And don't be afraid to use technology. Technology is a good thing. Have yourself a great day. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good job. Thank you. I'll see.